This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Tonight on The South Today, a large group of heritage tourists are the first passengers on the Kingston Flyer in 8 years. A home in Mosgiel for rescued animals is itself accused of animal neglect. And a school rugby team has made 40,000 cheese rolls as a fundraiser. Kia ora, good evening. I'm Daryl Baser. About 180 people made history yesterday morning, becoming the first passengers on the Kingston Flyer in more than 8 years. The historic steam train is one of the highlights of the Great Southern Train Tour, a tourist enterprise which organisers say has a lot of room to grow.
After an 8-year break, the Kingston Flyer is back chugging along the almost 14 kilometres of track between Fairlight and Kingston, south of Lake Wakatipu. Yesterday and today, hundreds of participants in the Great Southern Train Tour rode the steam train as one of the highlights in a huge heritage trip across the South Island.
We're running 2 tours simultaneously. One started in Christchurch with the Transalpine over to Franz Josef, 2 nights in Queenstown, Kingston Flyer, 2 nights in Chiano, then through to Invercargill, where they're going to disembark on 2 1950s heritage locomotives, double heading out of Invercargill, all the way through to Kaikoura. They'll stop again along the way at Dunedin, Oamaru and Christchurch, and then north of Kaikoura on AB 608, the Passchendaele, they'll be steaming all the way along the blue Pacific coastline, through the Awatere Valley, dissecting the Dashwood Pass into Blenheim.
The Flyer has operated off and on as a tourist attraction between Kingston and Fairlight. In 2011 it was revived by the late David Bryce, with restorations costing more than $1 million. But it ran for only 2 summers and was mothballed until investors bought the train and associated land and buildings in 2017. Jackson says his Pounamu Tourism Group is modelling its train tours on similar experiences on offer in Britain.
If you draw a comparison with the UK, where heritage injects millions and millions of pounds into the economy, this has inspired us to do a lot more of it.
Jackson says once accommodation, meals and the excursions themselves are added up, the 2 tours of various rail journeys are injecting about $2 million into the South Island economy, and he's confident there's room to grow.
There's plenty of room for more of this, and New Zealand is rich with heritage attractions like the Kingston Flyer, the Ern's Law, the transport museums, the list goes on. And it's something that people really want to see and do.
Jackson also says the Flyer's engineer Neville Simpson has put in a huge amount of work on the rolling stock, locomotives and carriages, as well as clearing the tracks and replacing sleepers. In Kingston, The South Today.
Emergency services attended a fire in the mixing room of a concrete supplier in Dunedin this morning. Fire and Emergency New Zealand says crews from Willowbank and Dunedin were called to the fire at Allied Concrete in Anzac Ave. A ladder truck was also at the scene due to the height of the structure. The fire was described as fully involved when fire crews arrived, but FENZ staff were quickly got the blaze under control and firefighters then ventilated the premises. FENZ says there were no injuries and the extent of the damage is not yet known. Police were called to the scene to help with traffic control. A new petting zoo in Mosgiel is home to everything from emu to fawns, plus farm animals which have been rescued from neglect. But the wildlife home is now under investigation by the SPCA after the park's keepers were contacted regarding animal welfare concerns at the property.
This farm on Dukes Road near Mosgiel is a home to a wide range of animals that have been rescued from unhappy situations. Called the Animal Ark, the farm fulfills the lifelong dream of Kelly Linnell to save animals from neglect.
It's just been my goal my whole life to have a farm, pretty much, and to have a place where I can have animals and no one can tell me that I have to get rid of them, I guess.
The park is open for the public to enjoy the animals and for the animals to enjoy the treats being fed by the public. But Linnell's dream has been soured by an SPCA investigation into allegations of animal mistreatment. She strongly denies the accusations, saying they're degrading and upsetting. She says the farm has rescued many animals, such as these Angora goats, from people who did not know how to take care of them properly.
The particular breed of goat that he was using was Angora, and Angora are not known to be a meat breed anyway. They're a wool breed. They are shorn obviously for Angora fleece. They don't put on a lot of weight, and unfortunately he didn't have any grounds or grass that would be suitable for goats anyway. So when we picked them up, they were literally skin and bone. They weighed less than 10 kgs each for an adult goat, and they should weigh between 35 and 40 kgs. The SPCA basically gave me 48 hours to kind of try and get them at least onto some sort of turnaround. As the vet said that they would probably be dead within 48 hours. They both survived, thankfully, which is really good.
The SPCA says it's investigating the park, but cannot comment further while the investigation is underway. In Dunedin, the South Today.
2 people suffered minor injuries after their car crashed and ended up on the side of a North Otago road. Police say the crash occurred in Beach Road, south of the North Otago Golf Course near Waimaru, about 2:15 this afternoon. 2 people in the car received minor injuries and no other vehicles were involved. Fire and Emergency New Zealand also attended the scene. A Dunedin High School rugby team sat down and did a hard day's work in their school's kitchen yesterday. The task for King's High School pupils was to create more than 40,000 cheese rolls to raise funds for the team.
It might be the school holidays, but these members of Dunedin's King's High School First 15 rugby team, plus family and friends, were back at school, filling pre-orders of cheese rolls as a fundraiser for the team.
The official number is that we've got 3,512 dozen cheese rolls being made. So that equates to around 44,000 individual cheese rolls. At this stage of the day, we're about 2/3 of the way there. It's been a long day so far, but the boys are sticking to the task, and again, we get to the end of the day around 7, 8 o'clock I think tonight, and they can look back and think, a job well done.
The fundraiser is designed to offset some of the costs of travel and uniforms for the rugby season, which their manager Darren Smith says can easily reach $25,000 for the team.
It's a pretty busy yet expensive undertaking that our boys have, having the privilege of being in the first 15. The purpose also is to ensure that their parents and caregivers are not continually having to put their hand in their pockets.
Smith says a day spent in the school's food tech room is an opportunity for the boys to build character through mahi, or hard work.
We want our boys to be working hard, not expecting that their parents and their caregivers are always going to be the ones to, I guess, write that cheque. There's a greater satisfaction, I think, for our kids today to actually be working, and I think they'll reap the rewards later on, and they reflect on that as well.
The team are set to play their traditional inter-school rugby match against Waitaki Boys High School next Wednesday. In Dunedin, the South Today.
And still to come on the South Today, there are more issues with oncology care in the South, and scientists have found out how far south kumara used to grow. See you after the break.
If you're at risk of developing melanoma skin cancer, you owe it to yourself to have a mole map. Mole map is coming to your area. Phone today to make an appointment. It could save your life.
A poorly maintained heat pump can lose up to 35% of its output. The Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner team are experts. Their specially developed chemical wash is totally biodegradable. Call Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner and get the job done by the professionals.
Inside are all sorts of innovations from all over China.
TV, our favourite babysitter, but it can be tough keeping up with what our tamariki are watching. Luckily, the Broadcasting Standards Authority has made some smart changes to the classification labels. Ooh! Plus changes to the time of day certain rated shows will air, and awesome new parental lock features, meaning your babysitter's job is safe. Find out more at safeviewing.co.nz.
No mai anō, welcome back. The Cancer Society says the appalling low rates of cancer scanning in the south are a continuing disappointment. Fewer than half of the Southern District Health Board's patients receive elective MRI scans within the organisation's 42-day target, and only about 2/3 of CT scan patients are seen within that time. The Health Board says it's responded to the issue by fast-tracking the purchase of a new CT scanner, plus putting on extra scanning sessions and trying to hire additional staff. The new CT scanner is expected to arrive in Dunedin about early August. University of Otago researchers have discovered Māori may have been growing kumara in coastal Otago nearly 400 years ago. These days, sweet potato is typically grown in the North Island, with Dargaville in Northland known as the kumara capital of New Zealand. Looking into the past with a microscope, University of Otago Associate Professor Ian Barber has just published findings in the respected international publication PLOS ONE, showing kumara were grown by Māori at Purakonui, 200 kilometres further south than previously thought possible.
In this instance, there are indeed granules of starch which, from the base of the pits, which have all the characteristics of sweet potato, and from the point of view of chronology, we now have very, very accurate radiocarbon dating that indicates to us that the pits were constructed and used within the period 1430 to 1460 AD or CE Common Era. So that's quite exciting.
The site near Dunedin was excavated about 20 years ago, but Barber says back in the early 2000s they didn't quite have the technology to fully study kumara pits. Associate Professor Barber says the southern climate was a limiting factor, but researchers aren't ruling out other southern kumara storage or even growing sites in Otago.
We also should acknowledge that in later Māori records and later ethnographic records there are no references to the local storage of kumara, with one exception, with a record from Huriawa Peninsula, which is very interesting in and of itself, a relatively warm microclimate. So while there could be more, we think that climate down here was a limiting factor, and that over time climate and possibly climate deterioration associated with the so-called Little Ice Age that impacted the Southern Hemisphere after 1500 CE could have discouraged more storage features for kumara in the far south, and potentially any microclimate production that may have occurred down here.
Barbara specialises in New Zealand Māori and Moriori archaeology at the University of Otago and is at pains to thank Southern Tangata Whenua for their help and support for the project. He says there's both oral tradition and early journaling about sweet potato crops in the south.
We worked closely with and we had the interest and support of the local runaka, Kati Huirapa ki te Puketeraki, and I really want to acknowledge Suzanne Allison there, and also the Purakanui Māori block and the current chair of that block, Nicola Taylor, who've been very interested and supportive. And with that interest and support, I was aware that there were local traditions that in fact mentioned kumara, and some of those traditions suggested that there may have been a kumara presence down here. There's a manuscript, for example, that I alluded to before, or at least a report in a manuscript I alluded to before from Hugh Carrington, the journalist, who compiled a Ngāi Tahu history in the 1930s, and he, according to that history, noted that the pa at Huriawa Peninsula near Karetane, which was under the management of Te Wera, that the kumara was stored at that pa during a siege of the pa by Te Wera's relative Taoka. So that was an interesting tradition, and there are other traditions about kumara atua associated, or gods associated with the pa, the Huriawa Peninsula pa, a deity in particular by the name of Roko or Rongo Nui Atau, and Roko or Rongo is the god of kumara, and so he's identified at Huriawa. There's another early account that even suggests that there may have been cultivations there.
As well as the discovery of kumara being stored 200 kilometres further south than originally thought, Barbara says narrowing the storage dates down to 30 years shows the calibre of the state-of-the-art technology the team used for the research. In Dunedin, the South Today. Toxic algae has again been found in the Matilda River. Environment Southland regularly monitors the river for harmful bacteria and recently reported elevated levels of the potentially toxic cyanobacteria. The algae has been found in a fourth testing site between Gore and Matilda. Cyanobacteria is potentially harmful to people and dogs if swallowed or through contact with skin. People should avoid contact with the Matilda River until health warnings are removed. And after the break on the South Today, Dunedin children are given lessons about how to care for animals with help from some furry friends. And we have the weather's outlook for Thursday and beyond. See you after the break.
MTF Finance can help you turn the key on your next vehicle with a loan made just for you. TCs and lending criteria apply.
Inside are all sorts of innovations from all over China.
If you're at risk of developing melanoma skin cancer, you owe it to yourself to have a mole map. Mole Map is coming to your area. Phone today to make an appointment. It could save your life.
A poorly maintained heat pump can lose up to 35% of its output. The Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner team are experts. Their specially developed chemical wash is totally biodegradable. Call Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner and get the job done by the professionals.
Thanks for staying with us. Dunedin youngsters yesterday had the opportunity to learn how to bandage their soft toys, should they become injured. Staff from Dunedin's Wildlife Hospital used it as a way for children to learn what local wildlife hospital does for injured native birds and animals.
How do you mend a teddy bear with a broken arm? Jordana White was one of several at the Otago Museum showing youngsters some of the bandaging techniques that are performed at a charity wildlife hospital.
It's just an activity that we can actually do with young children to kind of get them interested in the wildlife hospital and working with injured animals. And so we can't bring them into the hospital, so we try to bring an activity to them.
White says staff at the Dunedin Wildlife Hospital cater for all manner of injured animals, with some species being more regularly seen at the facility than others.
So our most frequently admitted patients would be hoiho, yellow-eyed penguins, and our second most frequently admitted are the kereru, the wood pigeons. So those would be, actually quite often it's members of the public that find those injured animals first, so those two species would be quite common to find.
When they're not taking part in community engagement exercises such as this one, the hospital staff are busy looking after injured and sick wildlife across the southern region.
Wildlife Hospital has been around for about 3 years now. We treat about 600 native species patients per year. We are a charitable institution, so we do rely on donations and grants from the public, which we deeply appreciate. And we serve most of the southern South Island.
Called Wildlife ER, the event was run as part of the Wild Dunedin Festival. In Dunedin, the South Today.
And now recapping tonight's top stories on the South Today. A large group of heritage tourists were the first passengers on the Kingston Flyer in 8 years. A home for rescued animals is itself accused of animal neglect. And a school rugby team has made 40,000 cheese rolls as a fundraiser. Time now for a look at what's happening in tomorrow's Otago Day Times. We welcome the Deputy Editor, Mr. Craig Page.
Kia ora,
Craig.
How are you?
Good, you?
Good. Hey, we've got something special for you in tomorrow's paper. We're delving into the world of pop stars. Dunedin's TJ Zimba has made it through to the top 9 of the new series Pop Stars, which has returned to New Zealand's TVs this year. I think last was 1999. That would have been the year of True Bliss, Daryl, and you've still got the T-shirt.
I remember that well.
I bet you do. So TJ's halfway through his physiotherapy degree at Otago Uni, but he's had to put that on hold for the show. Seems to be doing pretty well at the moment, trying to pursue his musical dream. We've had a decent chat to him, but of course the show's still screening. It was filmed several months ago, or a few weeks ago anyway. So he's been sworn to secrecy about just how he's got on as these things go. So you'll have to stay tuned to your TV to see how things go. But nice guy and doing really well.
And talented too. I saw him at Waitati a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, he is very good. Tourism Minister Stuart Nash, he's holidaying in Queenstown at the moment. We caught up with him, I guess, about the bubble and how things are going for Queenstown. Everyone was hopeful once the bubble opened they'd all come screaming back to the town, but it hasn't been so great. Lots of, I guess, people coming to catch up with friends and family, that sort of thing, but not so much the tourists. They've got their fingers crossed that the ski season and Australian school holidays coming up shortly will change all that. The advanced bookings are looking promising, so fingers crossed things are on the improve there. On a similar vein, COVID-19 vaccinations underway in Central Otago today. The first wave have gone out. The at-risk frontline health workers are the first in the queue. So there's 700 of those to do over coming days, but making some headway there, so that's great. And finally, on the sporting front, a bit of concern for Otago cricket today. One of our brightest cricketing stars, Nathan Smith, has confirmed he's leaving Otago, heading to Wellington to play his cricket next season. So good North Otago lad, so Hayden Meikle, he's one of his finest. He's already played for New Zealand, so he's certainly making some headway out of Otago, but felt it's time for a change. Said it wasn't a reflection on Otago, but they've got some coaches up there that he's keen to work with, so is moving on. There'll be a bit of concern down at Otago Cricket headquarters, of course, with confirmation the coach Rob Walters moving to Central Districts as well next season, so a bit of a clean out. So they've got some work to do over the winter to fill some holes down there.
Maybe into a rebuilding phase.
Again, yes, again.
All that and more in tomorrow's paper.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jeremy.
Craig. Time now for a look at the weather.
Tonight's weather proudly brought to you by Mole Map.
Beginning with the Southern View, a bagpiper's shadow at Dunedin's Workers' Memorial. Looking at the situation, a large anticyclone is developing in the Tasman Sea, but a cold front arrives over southern districts early tomorrow with a period of colder southwesterly winds, bringing a few showers. Travelling to the northwest of the South Island, the showers give way to cloudy skies in this region, with 16 degrees for Westport and 15 in Greymouth. Across to the north of the island, clear blue skies are due tomorrow for Blenheim and Nelson, with a high of 19 degrees for Blenheim and 18 in Nelson. Shuffling down to Canterbury, Kaikoura and Christchurch can expect a clear day with 17 degrees, while Ashburton leads the pack, looking at a high of 19 degrees. Moving to the southern towns, fresh northwesterlies with cloud increasing and a high of 17 degrees for the Catlins and Balclutha. Lumsden and Gore are in for fresh northwesterlies, late rain and 16. Moving across to central Otago, moderate westerlies and cloud for most of you over here. Wanaka and Queenstown aim for 18 degrees. Alexandra slightly higher on 19, while Tiano needs to plan for a wet and windy day with fresh northwesterlies, rain and 15 degrees. In the northern towns, plan for light to moderate easterlies for Timaru and Oamaru. Timaru should reach 19 and Oamaru 18. It's a similar picture for those inland. Twizel and Omarama are both due for moderate westerlies, a bit of cloud and highs of 19 degrees. In Dunedin, some cloud tonight with an overnight low of 9 degrees. Milder tomorrow with sunny periods at first, but increasing high cloud and moderate northerly winds, a high of 18 and a low of 9. Expect a period of rain on Friday morning with colder southwesterlies freshening, then easing to showers around the middle of the day, which clear during the afternoon, a high of 13 and a low of 4 degrees. And in Invercargill, cloudy tonight with westerly winds and an overnight low of 8 degrees. Milder tomorrow with cloud increasing and northwesterlies freshening. Bring the washing in as there's likely to be some rain at night, a high of 17 and a low of 9. Showers at first on Friday, clearing by early afternoon with cold, fresh southwesterlies decreasing. You're looking at a high of 11 and a low of 3 degrees. And that's all from the South Today team for this Wednesday. For the latest news from the southern region, please head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on YouTube and Facebook. Have a great evening. Ka kite anō.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.